My father told me I was dead to him, all because I refused to invite my own brother to my wedding. People say you are supposed to forgive family, but they don't know the whole story. They don't know what he did, what he has always done. This is the story of how one single act of self-preservation lit a match that burned my entire family to the ground. It is the story of how choosing my own peace cost me everything I was ever told was supposed to matter. They say family is everything, right? It is the one constant you are supposed to have, your built-in support system. But what happens when that safety net is just full of holes? What happens when the person you are told to love, no matter what is the very reason for your deepest pain? When my fiancé asked me to marry him, it was easily the happiest day of my life. A perfect autumn afternoon in the park where we had our first date. He got down on one knee, the ring was stunning, and for a few perfect hours, the world was just right. We celebrated with champagne, called our friends, his family. The joy was just overwhelming. But later that night, after the bubbles wore off and the euphoria started to fade, this cold dread just crept in. It was a familiar shadow, one that has followed me my whole life, and it had a name, David, my brother. As we were lying in bed, talking about the future, about venues and guest lists, the question hung in the air between us, totally unspoken but deafening. What were we going to do about David? And right then, I knew. I just knew this happy, beautiful new chapter of my life was about to get dragged back into the same old toxic story I'd been trying to escape for years. Before we really get into the firestorm that followed, if you've ever had to make a really hard choice when it comes to family, if you've ever felt that pit in your stomach knowing you had to choose yourself over their expectations, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments if you think some lines just shouldn't be crossed. No matter who it is, your stories matter here. Trust me, you are not alone. To understand why I'd make a choice that would detonate my whole family, you have to see the foundation it was built on. And that foundation was cracked from day one. David is 5 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, our roles were set. He was the golden child, I was the afterthought. He could do no wrong, I could do no wrong. It started small, the kind of stuff parents brush off as sibling rivalry. He'd break a toy and somehow manage to cry so expertly that I was the one sent to my room for upsetting him. He'd say these cruel, cutting things to me in the car, just quiet enough for my parents not to hear, and then flash this perfect, angelic smile when they glanced in the rearview mirror. He called it teasing. My parents called it just how brothers are. I called it what it was, torture. He was a master of that subtle cruelty, of making me feel tiny and worthless while he looked like a saint. As we got older, the manipulation got worse. It wasn't about broken toys anymore. It became more sinister. In high school, I spent weeks working on a huge history project. I was so proud of it. It was the first time I felt really smart. The night before it was due, David accidentally spilled an entire can of soda all over it. He just stood there, pretending to be shocked, saying, "Oh my God, I am so sorry. I tripped." My mom ran in, saw my tear-streaked face and the ruined project. And the first thing she said was, "Oh, honey, don't be so hard on your brother. It was an accident." I stayed up all night redoing the entire thing, my hands cramping. I got a C minus. David never got in trouble. He just watched me suffer with this detached, almost curious look in his eyes. Then came the money, in college. I was working 2 jobs to pay for books and rent, and I'd managed to save about $800. It was my emergency fund, the only thing that gave me any sense of security. David was in between jobs. Again, he came to me with this whole sob story about his car, how he couldn't get to interviews, how he was about to be evicted. He swore on our family's life he'd pay me back the second he got a job, he cried. He actually said, "You are my little sister. You are the only one I can turn to." I believed him. I gave him every cent I had. Weeks went by, then months. When I'd ask about the money, he'd get angry. "Are you calling me a liar? I said I'd pay you back. Stop hounding me." Then he'd run to our parents, and I'd get a call from my mom. "Honey, you know he is good for it. Don't pressure him. He is trying." I never saw that money again. A year later, I found out the car story was a complete lie. He'd used the money for a weekend trip with his friends. When I confronted him, he just laughed and said, "You were dumb enough to give it to me. That is on you." But the final straw, The thing that just severed the last thread of obligation I felt for him happened about a year before I got engaged. I'd just gone through a really bad breakup, and I was a mess, in a moment of weakness. A moment of stupid hope that my big brother might finally show up for me. I confided in him. I told him everything, all my deepest insecurities, the ugly fears the breakup brought up. I cried, he listened. He even hugged me. For 1 second, I thought, this is it. This is the brother I always wanted. 2 weeks later, at a big family dinner, my ex came up in conversation. My aunt asked how I was doing. Before I could even open my mouth, David jumped in with a smirk. "Oh, she is fine," he said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. Though it is probably for the best he left. I mean, can you blame the guy? And then he listed, almost word for word, every single insecurity I had shared with him in private. He twisted my pain into punchlines for our relatives. He painted me as pathetic and unlovable, all with a smile on his face. The table went silent. My parents just looked uncomfortable, but they said nothing. Nobody defended me. I felt the blood drain from my face. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor, and I just walked out. Mark, who was just a friend at the time, saw the whole thing. He followed me outside and sat with me while I sobbed in my car for an hour. He didn't tell me it would be okay or that I should forgive him. He just witnessed it. After that night, I went low contact with David. I stopped answering his calls and made excuses to miss family events. My parents, of course, didn't get it. Their family at all cost mentality was unbreakable. It was always, but he is your brother. You have to forgive. They saw my boundary as me being stubborn, as me creating the problem. They never once acknowledged the decades of pain he'd caused. So when Mark and I actually sat down to plan our wedding, the David question wasn't a question at all. It was a statement. Mark looked at me, with all the love and support he'd shown me that night in the car, and said, "We are not inviting him. This day is about our joy and our peace. He has no place there. It is not even up for discussion." Hearing him say it so clearly, with so much conviction, it felt like a 1,000-pound weight was lifted off my chest. I wasn't crazy. My feelings were valid, and the person I was building my life with saw that. We made a pact then and there. Our wedding would be a sanctuary, filled only with people who truly loved and supported us. It was our decision to start our marriage on a foundation of health, not toxic obligation. In our minds, it was simple. It was necessary. We were so naive. We really thought, or maybe just hoped, that for this one huge event, my parents would finally prioritize my happiness. We thought if we explained it calmly, they might see it was a reasonable boundary. We were about to find out just how deep their denial ran, and just how little my peace mattered next to their perfect family picture. The campaign started with my mother. It always did. She was the soft approach, the guilt trip sent in before my father brought out the heavy artillery. I called her a few days after we got engaged, excited to talk about dates and venues. She was thrilled for me, until she said it, the sentence that popped my little bubble of joy. "Oh, this is all so wonderful. Mark will have his best man, and you'll have your maid of honor. And David will be one of the groomsmen, right? It will be so lovely to see both my children up there." Her tone was so certain. It wasn't a question. My stomach just dropped actually. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mark already has his groomsmen picked out, and we've decided it would be best if David doesn't come to the wedding." The silence on the other end was heavy. Then, this small, wounded sound. What are you talking about? You can't be serious. This is your wedding. You have to invite your brother," I tried to explain. "Mom, we don't have a good relationship. Our wedding day is supposed to be happy. Having him there would cause me so much anxiety. We just want a peaceful day." She wasn't hearing it. Her voice started to climb. Anxiety. It will cause more problems if you don't invite him. What will people say? What will that look like to the family? You are breaking my heart. You can't do this to me. And just like that, it was about her, about appearances. I ended the call saying I was sorry she felt that way, but our decision was final. That was the opening shot. Within an hour, the text started. From Mom, I haven't stopped crying. "I can't believe you would be so cruel. You are tearing this family apart." And then right on cue, my dad. His texts weren't pleas. They were commands. From Dad. Your mother is hysterical. Stop this nonsense now. This is not a debate. David is your brother. He will be at your wedding. End of discussion. I showed the text to Mark, my hands shaking. He just hugged me and said, "We're a team. Don't respond." We don't have to justify this. A few days later, my mom called and invited me to dinner. Just the three of us, she said, her voice syrupy sweet. Let's just have a nice family dinner. I was hesitant, but a small, stupid part of me hoped she meant it. I went. It was an ambush. My dad was there, arms crossed, face like a thundercloud. They sat me on the sofa like I was in the principal's office. This isn't about your feelings, my dad started. It is about family respect. You don't just cut your brother out over some petty squabbles. Petty squabbles, I asked, my voice shaking with anger. Dad, he humiliated me. He stole from me. He has torn me down my entire life. My mom started crying, her go to move. How can you say these things? She sobbed. He loves you. Why are you trying to hurt him? To hurt us? Then came their compromise. Fine. My dad sighed dramatically. He doesn't have to be a groomsman, but he will be invited as a guest. He will sit with us. No, I said, the word feeling surprisingly strong. Number, he is not welcome, period. I tried one last time. I brought up the dinner party when he used my pain as a joke. How can I stand at the altar, promising my life to Mark, with the person who did that to me sitting in the crowd? My father's response was ice cold. That was over a year ago. Grow up and forgive. You don't just throw family away. They were invalidating every single thing I felt, just like they always had. I left their house more resolved than ever soon. The guilt trips were coming from everywhere. Aunts, cousins, all fed a story where I was the villain. Section 3, David's manipulation, and then the call I was dreading. An unknown number. It was David. He didn't sound angry. He sounded hurt, like a kicked puppy. It was his most dangerous act. Hey, he said softly. Mom told me I am not invited. I don't get it. What did I do? The gaslighting was so fast it nearly knocked the wind out of me. What did you do, David? Are you serious? Of course, I am serious. I love you. You are my sister. Why would you want to hurt me like this? I brought up the dinner party. His answer. Oh my God, I was just joking around. I had no idea you were so sensitive. I am sorry if I hurt your feelings. A classic non-apology. I brought up the money he stole. I told you I was going to pay you back. Things have been tough. Do you really think I am that kind of person? Yes, I do. The whole conversation was a masterclass in his manipulation. He twisted every fact, reframed every memory. For a split second, he was so good, I almost wondered if I was overreacting. But then I saw Mark in the doorway, and I remembered that feeling of total humiliation. I remembered the years of betrayal. I remembered the peace I'd felt since he'd been out of my life. David, I said, my voice suddenly cold and clear, I am done. The decision is made. Don't contact me again. I hung up. The war was on, but I had no idea how much further they were willing to go. The final showdown happened a week before the RSVP deadline. There was just this eerie, cold silence from my family. I'd started to hope they'd finally given up. Then my father called. I knew this was it. His voice was flat, empty of all emotion. I am making this very simple for you, he said. Your mother and I have talked. We've spoken with your aunts and uncles. We are a family, and we have decided. He paused. If your brother isn't welcome at your wedding, then neither are we. Not me, not your mother. Your Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim won't be there. Your cousins won't be there. You are forcing us to choose, so we have. It is him, or it is no one. You can have your wedding, but you will not have your family. The choice is yours. There it was. The ultimatum, the nuclear option. My brother or my entire family, they were holding their love hostage, and the ransom was my silence. And a strange thing happened. I expected to feel devastated, to just crumble. And part of me did feel this deep, gut-wrenching sadness for the family I wished I had. But a bigger part of me felt this shocking wave of clarity. They had just confirmed everything. They proved, in one cold statement, that my pain meant nothing. They would rather have an empty seat at my wedding than upset the golden child. They'd rather throw their own daughter away than face the truth. I was quiet for a long time. I could hear him on the other end, waiting for me to break. when I finally spoke. My voice was just as quiet and steady as his. "I am sorry you feel that way, Dad," I said. "The choice was never about him versus you. It was about my peace on my wedding day. I was choosing me. I am sorry you can't support that." I paused. "I hope you'll reconsider. But I understand your decision." There was a sharp breath on his end. I don't think he expected that. He hung up. The war was over, and I had lost. Or maybe I had finally won. The weeks leading up to the wedding were surreal. The angry texts never came. Instead, there was just nothing, a complete wall of silence, like my whole side of the family tree had been sawed off. It was lonely, but it was also quiet. For the first time in my life, there was no drama, no manipulation, no walking on eggshells. Mark was my rock. My friends, who had seen David's behavior for years, rallied around me with this fierce loyalty. They filled the gaping hole my blood relatives had left. Then, the RSVPs came back. One by one, the will not be attending boxes were checked. My parents, uncles, cousins. Each white card was a paper, and ink confirmation of their choice. I remember sitting with Mark, the pile of no's growing, and trying to draw the seating chart. There was a whole section that was just empty. It was a visual of the chasm that had opened in my life. Seeing it like that, the empty circles where my family was supposed to be, that was a sharp, physical pain. They were really going to abandon me on my wedding day. In that moment, all the guilt they had dumped on me felt so heavy. I broke the family. I was the difficult one. But then, underneath the guilt, a different feeling started to bubble up. Relief. Overwhelming, liberating relief. There would be no forced smiles, no tense small talk, no looking over my shoulder, waiting for David to start something. The price for peace had been incredibly high, but the peace itself was becoming real. I was about to have a wedding free from the very people who caused me the most pain. So that was the choice they gave me. My brother or my entire family. Before I tell you what happened on the wedding day, I have to ask, what would you have done? Is family an obligation you can never break, no matter what? Let me know in the comments. And if this story is hitting home for you, please consider subscribing. We talk a lot about these tough situations, and you shouldn't have to feel alone in this fight. Section 6. The Resolution. The wedding day and beyond the morning of my wedding was calm. The sun was shining, my bridesmaids were laughing, and there was a quiet in the air I never thought I'd have. Of course there was sadness. As my friends helped me with my dress, I thought of my mom. A daughter is supposed to have her mother there. But the grief was a dull ache, not the sharp anxiety I'd been bracing for. The hardest moment was walking down the aisle. My dad wasn't there. So Mark and I decided to walk down together, a symbol of us entering this new life as partners. As we walked, I couldn't help but glance at the guest seats. And there they were, 3 entire rows on my side, completely empty. Stark, vacant chairs. It was a public declaration of their abandonment. For a split second, my breath caught. It was just as devastating as I'd imagined, but then my eyes moved past the empty rows. I saw my friends beaming. I saw Mark's parents, their eyes filled with happy tears, welcoming me as their own. I saw my found family, the people who chose to be there, and as I looked at my husband, his hand holding mine so tightly, I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. The ceremony was beautiful. The reception was pure joy. We laughed, we danced, and not once did I feel that knot of dread in my stomach. It was the first major event in my life that was completely about my happiness. It was peaceful. It was liberating. It was ours. It has been 2 years since that day. I haven't spoken to my parents or my brother. The rift is now a canyon. I've heard through the grapevine that David tells people I had a mental breakdown and cut everyone off for no reason. My parents, I assume, go along with it. It is easier than the truth. Do I regret it? Not for a second. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. I still feel a pang of sadness on holidays or when I see a mother and daughter shopping. I am grieving the loss of my family, but I've realized I am not grieving the people they actually are. I am grieving the people I always wished they would be. Making that choice was the hardest thing I've ever done. But it was also the single greatest act of self-love I've ever committed. It taught me that family isn't a word defined by blood. It is defined by behavior. It is about who shows up and who respects you and who loves you enough to celebrate your peace. If you are out there facing a similar impossible choice, If you are being made to feel guilty for protecting your own heart, please know this. You have every right to protect your peace. You are not selfish or cruel for saying no, even when it feels like the whole world is screaming at you to say yes. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is love yourself enough to walk away. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.